Presentation today. Just wanted to welcome you all to SEL Week and SEL Day. My name is Liz Hanson-Warner, and I am the president of SEL4NJ, and just thrilled to welcome you all here. I'm going to share my screen just for go through just a few quick intro slides. And, oh, excuse me, as people are just still coming in. I'll get this sorted out. So as many of you know, we are offering 9 webinars this week in celebration of SEL Week. This year, SEL Day was on Monday, which kicked off the entire week. So thank you so much for joining us. And we are just thrilled that this is the 6th year of SEL Day. This year is Skills for Success, Ready for the Future. And it should be mentioned that SEL Day was a concept that was thought up by a lovely colleague in Assembly about 6 years ago. And in conjunction with, could somebody please mute? And in conjunction with SEL4US, SEL Day was launched. And very excitingly, 2 years ago, 6 Seconds joined in as the international partner. So since the launch of SEL Day, the effort has just grown and grown to now be an international global effort. I just have about 30 seconds of overview because some of you might be wondering who is bringing you SEL Day and these webinars. So SEL4US is a national network of states and alliances. We are SEL4 New Jersey. I'm actually in northern Wisconsin. I'm also SEL4 Wisconsin. And as you can see, there's states all across the country. And in fact, some of these should be shaded in sort of light yellow because they're in the process of coming on board. For instance, Minnesota, Georgia, Florida, etc. So this network is just incredibly strong, and it helps us just connect with others and learn from others, and likewise we hope they learn from us as well. SEL4NJ itself is an all-volunteer organization. What's interesting about SEL4NJ is we're made up of 4 distinct pillars. We really don't like silos. We love to connect. There's 3,400 members made up of educators, community partners, SEL providers, and very importantly, community partners as well. So, and we're really focused on advocating for best practice SEL as well as filling any gaps that might be out there. We do define SEL very broadly. Here at SEL4NJ, we know that SEL skills, social emotional learning falls across a broad variety of topics, efforts, focus. So all of this is underneath this umbrella that we call SEL for the purposes of SEL4NJ. So we kind of talked about what SEL Day is. It's really an opportunity to share and celebrate the great work that's going on in your schools every day. And so during SEL Week, we encourage you to share on social media and just kind of spread the love. New Jersey's always been a leader in this. And, you know, we know there are people joining us from farther afield, and it's just great. I think at the moment we have 50 states and I believe 70 countries who are all participating. This is just kind of some background. We're very pleased that Governor Murphy in New Jersey has signed a proclamation, and actually as we speak, the New Jersey State Board of Education is issuing a resolution recognizing SEL Week. So I'm very grateful to them, and it's wonderful that within New Jersey we have this kind of support from the grassroots level all the way through to the very top. So again, that's kind of what we talked about. We hope you sign up at selday.org. And with that said, I am going to stop sharing, and I'm going to introduce my colleague, Bill Trushheim. Bill is also a founding member, as well as currently in a leadership role at SEL4NJ. He also wears a number of other hats as the president of the New Jersey Alliance for Social, Emotional, and Character Development, as well as an instructor in the online academy for social emotional learning in schools. And that's just some of what Bill does. So Bill has also been the coordinator and the organizer of these webinars. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Bill to introduce our speaker today, we are just so excited and thrilled and grateful she could join us. She has an amazing amount of expertise and knowledge in this field. So I'm going to hand it over to Bill to introduce Karen, and then we will hear from our speaker.
Thank you, Liz, and it's my great pleasure to introduce to you today Karen Painter Randall. Karen is an absolute expert in the field of cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and all sorts of different aspects of that topic. She's a highly sought after attorney and expert in this field, and we are so glad that she's agreed to be part of our webinar series. And I know that you're going to enjoy what she has to say, even though some of it may be a little troubling in terms of some of the issues that schools face. But with no further ado, I'll turn it over to Karen and let her share her expertise in this field with you. Thank you again, Karen, for being with us, and I hope everybody enjoys the session.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Liz. I'm going to share my screen, so if you would enable that, that would be great. Let's see if we can get this to work. Okay. Okay, we will get this to work briefly. Has the screen sharing been enabled? I've lost you there, Bill.
You're sharing your screen right now, Karen, but you need to go to your slide deck.
Right here.
There you go.
There we go. Okay.
There we are.
That looks fabulous.
That's a pretty big title for today's discussion, and I'm certainly happy to see that we have a lot of people on this call, on this virtual meeting to discuss AI risk in schools. Certainly, AI is not new. Artificial intelligence has been around for a while. It's been around since the 1950s. I'm sure you all remember the big IBM chess championship that went on. You remember Siri, obviously, Alexa. Both Siri and Alexa came up during the election. Some were giving different responses to who's going to win the election or who was the better candidate. And then, of course, we had Sophia, which was one of the first robots created by artificial intelligence that received citizenship in Saudi Arabia. So this is our agenda for today. Certainly, I guess, Liz, are you monitoring any questions that come up in chat?
Definitely. Both Bill and I are watching.
Okay, great. All right, so let's get going here. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I am a partner and chair of the Cybersecurity, Privacy, and Incident Response Group at Connell Foley. I have been in the cybersecurity space probably for the last 15 years. It seems like I just started yesterday when I saw cybersecurity coming and knew that it was going to be something that would be significant for many organizations. It basically is determining risk for many organizations. Cyber risk is the #1 business risk out there. You'll go to meetings and find out from people that they're concerned about employment risk, bias risk, environmental risk, and then we ask them whether or not they've considered cyber risk. And certainly they don't think about it because they think it's technology. But in that space, what we do is provide proactive services to a lot of organizations who need to find a framework, who need to start putting together some type of plan to address cyber risk and cyber resiliency. We're really not focused on prevention anymore because those old cliches that you've heard, it's not a matter of if, but when, really run true. Some of the best organizations out there that you would think, including our own federal government, you would think they had the best security practices in place, the layered defense in place, and they do end up getting attacked and they do suffer breaches. So you may say to yourself, well, why does that concern me? Well, artificial intelligence certainly increases the risk landscape for many organizations. It's a new technology. There have been warnings going back for years. Vladimir Putin said many years ago that whoever controls artificial intelligence is going to dominate the world. You have Elon Musk, who compared artificial intelligence to something that could create civilization uh, uh, destruction. We have other people as well. Sam Altman, the creator of OpenAI, I think you probably all remember when he testified before Congress. He said AI scares him. Generative AI scares him. It's still flawed. And then obviously we have Jeffrey Hinton, who used to work for Google for years. He was considered the godfather of AI. He was very concerned about the fact that it was being developed too quickly, that there were many risks associated with it. One of the things that I do want to discuss with you before we go into some of the risks is, what is your responsibility as people who are working at schools or who are working for schools? What is your responsibility with regard to the use of generative AI, chat GPT as we call it? And by the way, as I said, AI has been here since the 1950s. Generative AI, chat GPT, who I'm sure all of you are familiar with, maybe some of you already use it on a personal level, that just surfaced in 2022. And since 2022, it has gone from chat at 3.5 to chat GPT 4.0, the chat GPT 4.0 Omni, just more and more sophisticated as time goes on. So what do you do with this new technology? They all have risks, right? And they all have benefits. And there are some benefits that apply to schools. But before you reach that point, I highly recommend that you understand how it works. Take a look at the usage and the service terms. Possibly that should start with leadership, who is going to authorize you to use this new technology. What are you working with? Would you get into a car without knowing how it operates? Would you operate a piece of machinery without knowing how it operates and how to protect yourself? This is new technology. And it is evolving as we learn more and more about it. So when I say take a look at the usage and service terms, I could compare your understanding of them to what is required of attorneys. One of the rules of professional conduct indicate that attorneys need to be competent. And in being competent, they must understand the risks and benefits of the technology that they use. I don't think you want an attorney to use ChatGPT to draft your briefs. I'm sure you've seen it in the news. A recent case with Morgan and Morgan just came out where the attorneys filed a brief with the court, and in that brief there were miscitations or citations made that didn't exist, quotes that were used in the brief. Remember, the briefs are written on behalf of the clients. The quotes didn't exist either, and that's because if ChatGPT does not have the answer, it's going to make something up. And that is one of the risks of using the ChatGPT tool. But let me just run through a couple of things with regard to the how it works, the usage and how it works situation. People don't read these usage terms, and then later on they wonder, well, gee, I wish I had known that. Otherwise, maybe it would have influenced my decision to use the new tool. ChatGPT indicated that if you input certain information, it may not be able to give you a legitimate answer. It warns you that it does hallucinate it and that it does get things wrong. They certainly have confirmed that over and over again. It's not a defense to anyone who uses it. Your defense can't be, well, they made a mistake. That tool made a mistake, so I shouldn't be held responsible. I call it garbage in, garbage out. Whatever you prompt, whatever you put into Chat GPT is there forever. They use it to train their models. They share it with third parties. Confidentiality, by the way, runs one way. It's confidential to OpenAI, but your inputs are not confidential for you. You waive the class action lawsuit that you may want to file against them. And by the way, the indemnification in the agreement runs one way as well. You must indemnify OpenAI. OpenAI is not going to indemnify you. One of the parts of these agreements that really concerns me with regard to schools is the security and privacy aspect of it. And I'm going to try to focus on that today, although you'll see a list of other risks as well. These are some of the school benefits. Certainly we can go through them, but I do want to, because I have a limited amount of time, I do have a focus on the privacy and security as it relates to schools. And that is whatever you put in to your prompt, if it contains information with regard to a student, with regard to a teacher, with regard to financial information, something called personally identifiable information, social security numbers. Schools might store those somewhere. People may be aware of it and want to put it in their prompt that goes into the machine. Remember, garbage in, garbage out. That's the machine is trained on it, and it ends up in another output that someone else is receiving. So, should there be private information inputted by a teacher or an administrator, that shouldn't be given to ChatGPT, and it is in an output later, that could be something that we consider a privacy violation under FERPA, or it could be an actual breach, right? Unauthorized access and exfiltration of sensitive information, social security numbers, financial information. We had a case that came in yesterday. It was a medical facility. They weren't concerned about operations as much as data because they had lost information through the attack about malpractice lawsuits filed against physicians. So sometimes it doesn't have to be private information. It doesn't have to be unauthorized access, but you could be inputting embarrassing information about a person as well. So I think it's going to be very important for any school, for any administrator who decides to use this ChatGPT or any other type of generative AI to have a complete understanding, right, of what you can do with the tool and how you can properly use it. Training people on the prompts. What can they put in? What shouldn't they put in? Make sure that you use tools to monitor, to make sure that whatever training that you gave people, it's being properly followed. I had another case where the client called me and they were starting to roll out generative AI. They were using tools to monitor people and found out that an individual had uploaded a document of 24,000 names, addresses, social security numbers, and dates of births that globally impacted those 24,000 people. It did rise to the level of a data security breach, and it cost them a lot of time, downtime, resources, and money to correct the situation. Evidently, the person who uploaded that document, even though they were properly trained, did not fully understand the impact of security and privacy. One of the other provisions in the usage term says, if you discover any vulnerabilities or breaches related to your use of the services, remember, unauthorized access of information and downloading it through a prompt, you must contact OpenAI and provide details of the vulnerability of the breach. As a breach coach, the last thing I want to hear from someone is that they uploaded a document with 24,000 names and followed the service terms by contacting OpenAI. AI first by providing them with the full details. Again, as a breach coach, once we learn of an incident, everything is handled by the breach coach under privilege. So if you contact OpenAI and you let them know about a security breach, that information is not going to be privileged, and sooner or later it may end up in the hands of a plaintiff's attorney who decides to bring a class action lawsuit, a privacy suit, things of that sort. So again, training people, this is what it is. This is how you use it. Training and prompt, making sure that they understand security and privacy implications. ChatGPT, again, it's a very sophisticated tool, and unfortunately, one of the risks in using ChatGPT is that you could end up having an email created using your information, and that information and email that's created could be sent to anyone on your contact list. The emails that are being created by ChatGPT and AI are more and more sophisticated. They're not your Nigerian prince anymore, obviously. You can take a look at this email. We're seeing a lot of this, by the way, where people are receiving a change in instructions for payment of an invoice, and the payment goes to the threat actor and not the person who gets payment. Something for you to be aware of on a security level. Let's just take a look at other implications. Certainly harassment and hate speech in the school. Job security. A lot of people will say, well, is AI going to replace my job? The answer is no. Gen AI is there to augment your job. Using the tool to do risk-free, maybe exploration of certain issues without putting in the names of people or the name of the school to brainstorm. It really could be very useful. But if you use it the wrong way, it could be very harmful as well. So when we're talking about losing jobs, if you find a way to use it so that you could focus on more important projects, it really could be very beneficial to you. Scams and fraud. I just gave you a perfect example. There's a phishing email. Gen AI can create code. It can create social engineering, phishing attacks. It can be very sophisticated, and it takes the information from your prompts. These tools start with scraping information from the internet. There's a lot of information out there. Those hallucinations that I referred to earlier occur when you ask it a question, it doesn't have an answer because it has not been trained on that topic yet. So it will certainly make up those responses. For schools, again, ethical and legal concerns. I teach a course myself at a university, and the question was, do you want your students to use Gen AI? My answer was no, because I want them to think. I want them to be creative. I don't want the course to be attended by Gen AI. So these are things that the school has to be aware of, your school, and certainly address in the policy that you ultimately put together after making a decision in terms of the risk, the benefits. Do we want to take the next step? What is our acceptable use policy? Unknown risk, because it is constantly evolving and overly relying on AI, as I just discussed. You don't want your students just to go home, get on Gen AI, and take a test or answer, an assignment. Because you don't know if it's their work product or someone else's, and you don't know whether or not in their prompt they're using improper information, names, names of the schools. So really something that if you decide to move forward with, you're going to have to come up with a policy both for staff and for students. I thought these stats were interesting. Take a look at them. What really jumped out at me was the teens thought that one of the concerns of using Gen AI is the new form of harassment and cyberbullying that's coming out of it in the form of either text messages, emails, or something called deep fakes. that we'll talk about briefly. But the good news is it looks like parents and teens do have an understanding of what it is. Navigating student data privacy in the classroom, again, very important. We talked about it briefly. As the new technologies come in, you have to understand the risks and benefits of them. I know many of you already know what constitutes student data. Falls under FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, protects educational records that contain information relating to a student, which are maintained by an education agency, institution, or by a third party. Third party, keep that in mind. It's like anything else with regard to security, but applies to privacy as well. What are you doing with the data that is entrusted to you? Do you have proper security measures in place to protect it? Is it encrypted if it's highly confidential? If you get attacked and a threat actor takes that information, if it's encrypted, they won't be able to read it, which means there is no unauthorized access or exfiltration of information requiring student notification. If you're going to entrust student information, school information, sensitive information to a third party, you have an obligation of vetting that third party because it's your data. And you must make sure that that third party, whoever it is receiving that data, has proper security measures in place. As much as you're going to vet the decision on whether or not you want to use Gen AI, artificial intelligence, knowing the risks and benefits, don't forget about your vendors. You may take a position that is not to be used for school purposes, and you may have a policy in place that covers that. But if your vendor uses it, your vendor gets the information, the sensitive data from you, and decides to use Gen AI in processing it or in dissecting it or to use it to train their own Gen AI machines, you're going to run into a problem through privacy and security. You're going to need to answer a lot of questions as to why that information might be at risk today because you did not vet that third party. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the PowerSchool breach. We handled a lot of the response efforts for schools out of southern New Jersey. That's a perfect example of a third-party vendor, software vendor, being used by schools who suffered an incident, and as a result, the school's information being stored on PowerSchool became at risk. Social security numbers, something that should not have been stored anyway through PowerSchool, were at risk, and other sensitive information, including medical information, that became at risk because of the third-party vendor. Again, a lot of schools had not vetted that vendor for a long time. Make sure that you look at the vendors you're doing business with. Make sure that the contracts are updated. I've had many calls with schools when we talk about agreements and whether or not there's notification provisions in them running both ways. They look at their agreements and they date back 10 or 15 years. Really make sure your agreements are up to date, that you understand what your obligation is under their agreement, and they understand what your obligation is, what their obligation is, for you. We talked about deep fakes. This is something that's new. I'm sure you all have seen it. You've heard of it. You saw it in the news with Westfield High School. These are very dangerous. Again, it's the use of artificial intelligence to create a deep fake in the form of a machine learning artificial intelligence. It acts and looks. I'm emphasizing that like humans. It comes as an image. It could come as a text. It could come as an audio clone. And it also is impacting the creation of fake social media accounts. Believe it or not, the virtual interviews that are being conducted these days, some of them are deep fakes. So you may have HR on the phone with someone or on a Teams interview. Person looks great, they sound great, they give their information out, and then you start to exchange sensitive information with that person, it ends up that they're just collecting intel from you all to set you up for a data breach. So it's going to be really important to have an understanding of what are deepfakes, again, how are you going to educate your workforce, what policy are you going to put in place for both training, detection, and response. For example, if someone thinks that they're interacting with a deep fake, how are they going to report it? Who are they going to report it to? That's going to become equally important. I'm sure a lot of you saw, maybe some good deep fakes that were out there. Tom Cruise was out there. We had some with regard to schools. You can certainly bring history into the lesson through AI, Gen AI, maybe even good deep fakes. Creating characters to run through the course. But there's some bad ones too. There was one that was created showing the Pentagon blowing up. You certainly all saw the deep fake with Taylor Swift. She probably got through it a lot easier than a high school student would be, because she's a celebrity, and she had a platform to let people know that the deep fake was in fact fake, wasn't her. And she became an advocate for any new laws that prohibited the use of deep fakes. Here's some good ways to train your workforce on how to spot a deep fake. One of the key ways to spot a deep fake is by having the person turn their head to the side. Usually, you'll be able to see that the person you think you're speaking with is not the actual person. There was a recent case involving a board. The CFO was instructed to wire $25 million. Obviously, you don't do that right away. There was a board meeting. The board members sat around the table. They looked like the board members. They spoke like the board members. The CEO was present. He was not on the video, but he was there audio-wise. Sounded just like them, had a couple of meetings. And by virtue of these virtual meetings and instructions, the CFO ended up wiring the $25 million to a different account, and it was a deep fake, and they lost $25 million.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
So that's an example of a deep fake. Creates all sorts of problems. Again, through the deep fake, we could certainly look at defamation claims, educational disruptions, legal and ethical concerns. These are some of the school cases. There are others that are developing. One of the things that really bothers me about Lancaster County Day School is that you're looking at explicit, probably pornographic AI images of 50 female classmates, and the head of the school was notified about its creation, but actually did nothing, allowing more students to be targeted for the months, 4 months. There are going to be lawsuits, privacy lawsuits, emotional distress lawsuits. And here you saw protests by the students. What I want to really emphasize here is that it's not only important to be educated about generative AI and the risks that come with them, but what are you going to do about it? If there is a deep fake in your school, if you learn of it, you have to have an incident response plan that really addresses the deep fake. You have to preserve the evidence for the benefit of the students and for law enforcement. Create a relationship with law enforcement in advance. Have them come into the school, have a presence, educate your students and your staff about what deep fakes are, and how to get in touch with them should it happen. There should be a person designated at the school for receiving reports of deep fakes, for knowing how to investigate, who to contact in terms of breach coaches, in terms of law enforcement, in terms of preserving evidence, maybe through the classmates that have been impacted, knowing how to reach out to parents and students, knowing how to communicate with them so that you're not putting yourself in a more difficult situation to defend against lawsuits. We do that incident response. When we're working with responding to a data breach, all messaging comes through our office. If someone should call, they call us. We talk about the issue and we create a draft message for leadership, for the administration, to use in responding to maybe staff, parents, students' questions. We want to make sure that the message is consistent and that reduce any exposure. Westfield High School, similar. I'm not quite sure what happened to those kids, but it certainly caught the attention of the New Jersey legislature. They're still struggling with getting a law passed. I don't know what the delay possibly could be, but we'll keep hammering them and making sure that we have a law passed shortly to make sure that students are protected. Here are some mitigation steps. Again, I'm moving a little quickly, but I want to make sure that we address some of these. I'm certainly available to answer any questions after the presentation. Again, learn how AI works, understand the usage terms. Someone sent me an AI policy the other day and said, "What do you think? Shall we start?" And I had to explain to them that in making a decision on whether or not you want to use AI or Gen AI, you need to sit down with leadership and have that discussion. Make sure that everyone understands what it is and reach the point where you say to yourself, knowing the risk and benefits, is this something that we want to use right now? If it is, what risk does it bring? Are we just going to give it to HR to use? Are we going to give it just to marketing to use? Do we have a very small group of individuals who we trust, who have good knowledge in this space, to test the tool? Is it going to be an open source tool that they use, i.e., using any and all information scraped from the internet? Or are we going to create our own source tool by creating our own data that could be tapped into through input, output from within the organization? So the risk would be lowered. Once you make that decision, then you start the strategic planning. You look to other risk management frameworks. Sometimes we go to NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. The American Bar Associations has good frameworks. I served on the New Jersey State AI Committee and Task Force, and they have come up with a great framework on how attorneys can best use Gen AI. They have vendor checklist, how to vet your vendors. So those are the types of frameworks and guidance that you really need to educate yourself on to, again, have an understanding of this new technology. Consider how to manage and mitigate the risk. We talked about the incident response plans. Again, similar to cyber and privacy for both those spaces. We talk about best practices, the NIST, understanding, detecting, responding in a prompt fashion. I always say to people, it's not the cyber attack that people get angry over these days because everyone seems to be having them, but your response effort will be closely scrutinized. And if you haven't spoken about how you would respond to the inappropriate use of AI, Gen AI, cyber breach, you'll never get through it in a timely fashion, which really brings you to the front with regard to regulator enforcement. Ethical AI, leadership, users, stakeholders. It is a holistic approach to the use of this new technology and in the cyber and privacy space. You have to understand where you need to comply in order to have the proper use of Gen AI rolled out. Again, we talked about some of these things, all great points to look at if you're making a determination on whether or not you want to use ChatGPT. There's much material out there on the proper prompting that can be used. Training in prompting is going to be very important after you highlight the importance of keeping inputs private and not using private or confidential information. There are deepfake detection tools out there. Again, it is a risk that schools need to deal with, administrators need to deal with. Putting together your plan may include the use of some of these tools to detect whether or not your staff, after training, is properly using or properly detecting, properly responding to deepfake attacks. Here are some key strategies for putting together a deepfake policy for your school. Again, collaboration with experts. You see a certain trend or a certain pattern that applies really to privacy, cybersecurity, and now AI. A holistic approach. It's not a product, it's a process. And even after you put a policy together, it's really something that has to be revisited every 2-3 months. This is that holistic approach to cybersecurity, but again, it also applies to AI. This is a good checklist for you as a school or as administrator or as an independent contractor. Really should paste up right next to your computer. Threat actors are even getting around multi-factor authentication these days. The patch management is very important. Password management is very important. All of those things really should be in place. You should have a comfort level with your baseline cybersecurity before you decide to introduce Gen AI into your environment. These are some of the developments that we're seeing out there. United States is it's not quite there yet. Same with the data breach laws. You would think that we would have one federal law that addresses data breaches. We don't. We have 50 different state laws. So when we're handling a data breach, we really need to know who is impacted, but where their current residence is. Once we find that out, we need to go to the state law to find out what the consumer regulation provides, what is the legal notification requirement. They're all different. It would be a lot easier if we had one law. Hopefully one day we will, but we also don't have any AI law out there on the federal level. The European Union, EU, Artificial Intelligence Acts really is the prototype, and I think the United States will be following it. Take a look at the risk levels below. They start with prohibited, high risk, low risk, no risk. And based upon the risk analysis that you conduct, that will be the type of compliance measures, mitigation measures that you'll need to put in place. Again, start with a part of your organization that doesn't present high risk. Marketing. I don't see them putting in, client, customer, student, staff names in performing their work. They're doing a lot of business development, creative work. So it might be a good place to start. Probably better place to start than HR. China, again, highly regulating any entity that is using AI. They want it reported to the government as soon as possible so that China can regulate how you use it and for what purpose you're using it. There are probably 22 state laws right now rolling out different laws on the use of AI, but they all address different issues. Some are more concerned about bias in hiring. Some are more concerned about healthcare, security, privacy, bias, intellectual property. So there's not one objective being achieved across the board through these 22 state statutes. Here are some of them. You see what I'm talking about? That's what their focus is. It's always good to run through the cyberbullying laws and regulations. Again, schools should be familiar with these laws. They should be discussing them. They should have an instant response plan in place should cyberbullying through the use of artificial intelligence, Gen AI, come about, making sure that you're taking the right steps to mitigate your exposure. Again, same thing for sextortion. Interestingly, the First Lady, Melania Trump, just yesterday announced that she was going to be a spokesperson for a federal law on sextortion. The law, as it was just announced, will require that anyone who posts pornographic images in an attempt to sextort an individual must take down that sextortion video within 48 hours. Great move in the right direction. Let's see if it gets passed. Again, if that law gets passed, the schools, administrators, teachers, you need to be familiar with the law and make sure that you have a plan in place to follow to make sure that if measures need to be taken by the school to report it, that it is done in a prompt and quick fashion. You can't receive a report from a student saying that they were victimized through sextortion and not report it to the appropriate authorities who may compel the takedown of that video. If you delay the report in 10 days or 2 months, or you don't do anything like that one schoolmaster, you'll be criticized for it and probably face consequences. So be familiar with those time limits. These are just new developments also affecting schools. Great, bullet points for you to be familiar with, great laws. Make sure that you're well informed and that you share these new laws with leadership and that you have an instant response plan in place to address them if they're violated. This is the law that Melania Trump just announced yesterday. It's called Take It Down Act. Again, after today's program, you might want to let your leadership know about it. Predictions for the use in the future: lawsuits, lawsuits, lawsuits. Make sure that you protect yourself. Quality of prompts, I think, is also going to be very important. And so we got through that in a record time. I hope you all enjoyed it and that you took something from it. Feel free to call me if you have any questions, or go through Liz or Bill. Liz, I don't know if there are any questions.
There's nothing in the chat, but we'll open it up now. If anyone would like to pose a question, feel free to unmute and ask, or write something in the chat. Karen, I have to say, this has been an absolute wealth of information, and I've been scribbling the whole time, and there is so much to pay attention to. But can I, while we're waiting to see if anyone else has a question, when you think about the risk that schools face, is it, when we talk about AI and ChatGPT, is it really security and data breaching is the issue? Is that the top issue that schools should be concerned about when it comes to ChatGPT and AI?
Yeah, I think so. It really bothers me because, as I mentioned before, garbage in, garbage out. If a teacher, if an admin, even a student decides to use Gen AI without fully understanding the risk and benefits, and they input student information that might be protected by FERPA, or they input protected health information protected by HIPAA, or social security numbers that we define as personally identifiable information, along with a person's name, they are going to be violating laws and regulations. And sooner or later, it does come out on the output, either on your own end or on someone else's end. And then that raises the question: if a mistake is made, do you have a policy in place that that is available to leadership, to staff, to report the fact that they think that they may have made a mistake by inputting that information? Remember, a lot of schools do have insurance coverage, cyber insurance coverage. Right now, as I'm hearing it, Gen AI mistakes are covered under a cyber liability policy of insurance. But what is your policy on if you make a mistake inputting data? Should you report it? Who are you going to report it to? How is it going to be addressed? Do you notify informally? Do you notify formally? Do you tell your insurance carrier so that you can open a claim and have the claim covered under a policy of insurance? So again, that gets back to starting with that initial discussion. What is this tool? What do the usage terms say? What are the risks? What are the benefits? Great benefits for school, but what are the risks? And how can we put up guardrails to reduce those risks if we choose to use it? Or after having that discussion, are we just going to put up a policy right now until things calm down? Because changes are being made to these tools. Are we just going to set a policy? And you have to have some type of policy in place. Is our policy going to be you can't use AI or Gen AI for performing school services? And in particular, you know, even for your personal use, never put in student information, school information, IEPs, nothing to perform services related to, school activities. So don't make a silent decision. You need to make a decision on, are we going to use this tool? And if so, what way, where are the guardrails? Or if you're not ready, have a policy in place to let the school know that you're not ready. Should something then happen, at least you have a defense.
Great, thank you. So it really, really, really will pay off for schools to do this thoughtfully, to do their homework, to build a foundation, and then go from there. So, well, thank you so much, Karen. This was just fascinating, and a couple people have asked whether this will be available, and it will be. A recording of the session as well as the PowerPoint will be posted on our site. So yes, this information is a lot to take in, and there were so many useful at the end. It was a great foundation laid, and then so many really practical things schools and school districts and school boards should take into consideration. So with that said, we're going to draw this to a close. Thank you so much. This is fabulous. We hope to have you on another time and keep us updated since this is changing so fast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks very much.
Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the week. Just to let you know, we have 6 more webinars coming up. So we're going from AI now to art in about 6 minutes. So
that seems a lot safer, Liz.
Doesn't it? Yes, it's a nice compliment, actually, I think.
Something that brings you much pleasure.
Yeah.